Welcome to the show that puts you at the centre of the national conversation about the issues that matter to you the most. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng say they've listened to the people and they get it. But tonight, make no mistake, the Prime Minister's judgment remains on the line. So has the chaos of the last week compromised Britain's reputation around the world? Must we now take the great out of Great Britain? I'm Trevor Phillips, and this is The Great Debate. Each week, we get to the heart of the issues dominating the headline. Tonight, to governors to choose. But U-turn or not, the Prime Minister, just 4 weeks in, must know that many in her own ranks are taking bets on when, not if, she will fall. She said she'd act, but not even her harsh critics anticipated the events of the last week. And now, as people fret over their bills and their mortgages, there are questions about the credibility of our government. As ever, our viewers panel from across the country and indeed across the world will share their stories and they'll have their say. And joining us in the studio this week are the businesswoman and Dragon's Den judge Deborah Meaden, the columnist from The Times, James Marriott, Gina Miller, the author and businesswoman who successfully challenged the government's prorogation of Parliament, and John Longworth, the entrepreneur, chairman of the Independent Business Network, who joins us from Birmingham. So let's take a look at our main question. Tonight, we're asking, is Britain still great?
Why not? Why can't we do it?
We may be a small island, but I tell you what, we're a great country.
I know because we're Great Britain that we will rise to the challenge.
Britain will always stand up for freedom and democracy.
I intend to deliver what we promised those voters right across our great country.
All of the talk here is of a highly significant U-turn by the government.
Are you going to say sorry, Chancellor?
I do stand by the package we announced.
They are neither the right economic nor the right political response to the situation that we face.
It feels like you can't dream anymore.
They can either cut their consumption or they can get higher salary or higher wages.
It has been tough, but with the British people, absolutely anything is possible.
Right, as always, let's get into it and go straight to our audience panel. And I would like to hear from Patrice Wellesley-Cole. Good evening, Patrice.
Good evening, Trevor. Thank you.
Good to see you again. What's your thought on this greatness question?
Well, Trevor, Britain is Great Britain because we have a permanent seat on the Security Council. We have a rich history, the welfare state and culture. Then there's a sense of fair play and a lack of corruption, making for transparency and accountability in all our public bodies. Where else would you want to live compared to Great Britain?
Well, that is pretty straightforward. I'm not sure everybody agrees with that. Let's go to Natalie Boncristiano. Natalie, do you recognise Patrice's description of our country?
Yes, I do. However, I'm a single mom and I work for a corporate job in aluminium industry, and we use a lot of energy to melt the scrap, for example. And the anxiety levels at the moment, it's really high up because we don't know what is going to happen here in UK. We don't know what's going to happen in Europe and our customers. So this is being in my mind, and the anxiety level, not just the crisis in UK, but this is, am I going to have a job or not? And what I see is the pillars that sustain Great Britain is crumbling. Because, for example, if you consider, in addition to what Patricia said, strong currency, NHS, credibility with the market. Those pillars are crumbling at the moment.
OK. Well, there are two quite diametrically opposed views of our country and, by implication, its future. Deborah Meaden, where are you lining up?
Well, I lined up with Patrice. Is there anybody anywhere else in the world I'd like to live? No. This is my country. I love it. But I also realise that we're in a very strange state at the moment. We're a little bit hung up on this word great. I mean, Great Britain actually refers to the fact we're the biggest island in the British Isles. And we kind of, that gets into our DNA and we kind of think we're, you know, it means that we're this big, strong... But for me, you've got to define what we want to be. What would we consider a great country? And we've got all of those elements, but they're being lost at the moment. They're whirring around in the ether, and I think we're lacking cohesion. So anybody looking at us might think, oh, they're having a bit of a wobbly.
So you're basically saying we've got all the ingredients, but it isn't really cooked in the right way. Where are you on this, Gina?
I have to agree that I think all the ingredients are there. When you look at where else would you want to live, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I do think we have great art, culture, great people. If you look at the number of Nobel Prize winners we have, like some of the best in the world, universities, arts. But there is leadership problems that we're seeing at the moment. And I think we're having we're suffering from a lack of direction, a lack of leadership, a lack of courage and compassion. And there is a nervousness and almost a depression that I find when I'm going around the country with the True and Fair Party that is worrying, because if we don't have that feeling that we have good leaders, that we can trust them and that we can actually build on what makes us great, then we have a country which is feeling almost going through a nervous breakdown. And I think that's where we are at the moment. And that leads to fear, and it leads to division and inequality. And those are the things we have to address.
John Longworth, we're getting a sort of a consensus here, which is this is a country that's got it all to play for, but actually we're making a bit of a mess of it, aren't we?
Well, certainly we've got every opportunity, and that opportunity has been squandered to some degree since we left the European Union in 2016. But it doesn't mean, of course, that we can't take advantage of it. I mean, Britain, contrary to popular opinion, and a lot of people prepared to talk the country down, is actually doing rather well by comparison with the rest of the world, who are actually all suffering from the post-pandemic slowdown. We have the second lowest debt-to-GDP ratio in the G7 countries. We have the highest level of exports to the EU that we've ever had. The economy is still growing, and yet other parts of the world are facing recession. But we could do so much better. And actually, everything that we have, all the things that have been mentioned, depend on the economy. So having a growing economy is crucial.
We're going to come back to all of that. And also, of course, we're going to talk about breakfast. But James, this is a remarkably cheerful prospect. Do you share it?
Well, I think the really interesting point there was about history. And I think one of the really unique things about Britain is that in our not-too-distant past, we had this extraordinary history, basically unique in the world. The empire, the first industrialised country, one of the first modern democracies. And I think the danger is that we assume that all these extraordinary values, this extraordinary position in the world that we had, we can coast along that forever. And those habits of mind, I think, are still quite recent to us, still quite present, and we might sometimes have to look at where we are now and perhaps not rely so much on, you know, these automatic ideas about British values and Britain's automatic position in the world that, you know, I think sustained us until, you know, for so long and until quite recently.
OK. Well, actually, not surprisingly, James, since you're so much younger than most of the rest of us, you're focused on the future. I want to talk to someone else who I think would also be looking to the future. Connor Summerall in Mansfield. Connor, I think, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, I think you're 16. So I think you're probably thinking rather more about what happens next than what happened before. You've got a question for our panel.
And I'm just... Yeah, with all the bad news that seems to be coming out daily for what's felt like months, I'm just wondering, what reasons are there to be hopeful for Britain over the next year?
Have you got any of your own, Connor?
I mean, the economy in theory should do better.
OK, all right. Gina, help Connor out here. What are the reasons to be cheerful for Britain?
I think Connor actually has a lot to worry about, and future generations have a lot to worry about, because we are burdening them by not taking responsibility and not being fiscally responsible at the moment, and loading debt on them in the future is a great worry. And the costs of rental, costs of accommodation, the lack of investment in skills and training, the lack of investment in childcare for when Connor wants to have a family, if he does in the future. The way that we've got a curriculum that really is not fit for the future, is still stuck in the past. These are things we need to invest in, and that's how you get growth, by investing in these infrastructure, in opportunities, in upskilling, and these are the things that will help Connor. But what I think is hopeful is I think the younger generation are much more realistic about the environment. I think that's something that we have to be, that they are incredibly hopeful for, is that they are, I think, the generation that is going to take this seriously, and that's a positive for him.
Deborah, the environment and the green cause has been your central concern in recent times, hasn't it?
Well, it has, but actually I'm going to pick up on that, because I think that's a real reason to be hopeful, not just because I think they're embracing the issues that we have in front of us and are willing to tackle them, but in that there is opportunity. We shouldn't look at this and think, oh, my goodness, what do? We should look at it and think, actually, we need to change the way we're living. We need to change the way we're doing business. And the young are incredibly well placed to do that, because they don't have the legacy. You know, they're not working with the old. So I think there is actually a lot of hope, because there's actually a lot of opportunity in this new green future. But, you know, you can't get away from the fact we've got to help them. You know, we can't just say, there you are, guys, over to you.
OK, thank you, Deborah. I'm going to come back to the viewers' panel, because I want to see what the mood of our audience is on this question of whether we should feel optimistic about who we are right now, or whether we should feel more pessimistic. Let's see. Those of you who feel tonight, at this moment, optimistic about Britain, and whether we call it great or not, those who feel optimistic, hands up. What are we seeing? We're seeing probably slightly less than half of you. OK, you can put your hands down. Those who are inclined to feel more pessimistic tonight. Let's have a look. I think right now we're kind of half and half. OK, let me come to Jackie Skip. Jackie, where do you stand on in this balance between the optimists and the pessimists?
I think at the moment I'm leaning towards the pessimist, but I just wanted to ask the panel, can we carry on like this? Or is a snap election needed? Let us have our say about it.
Wow, OK. Now, that's maybe a way to break the deadlock. James, snap election.
Well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I feel like we've been through so much uncertainty at the moment. And one of the things that I felt recently is that Britain, which has had quite a good tradition of stable government, in the last, 6 years, we've had 3 prime ministers, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, now Liz Truss. The prospect of yet another election, or even, if the Conservative Party decides to get rid of Liz Truss, yet another great, big, dragging, endless-feeling Conservative Party leadership election. I find it a bit hard to stomach, but you have to say, the further we get away from that 2019 election where Boris Johnson came in, the further we feel away from any sort of sense of legitimacy that, the government now has, especially with these very kind of radical new policies that have come in with the mini budget that came out last week.
OK. John, you're in Birmingham with the Conservative Party conference, so you're no doubt getting the mood. Is there any appetite there for a snap election, or indeed another leadership contest?
Well, there are some rumours about that sort of thing. I mean, I think if we were to have another leadership contest, there'd have to be a general election, because it simply wouldn't be tenable. But the truth of the matter is that Trussonomics, Liz Truss's agenda for the UK economy, for the first time in a lot of people's living memory, we're actually trying to go for growth as a country, rather than having a constant round of austerity, which does nobody any good. So really, we should feel quite optimistic because within a year's time, we should be looking at growth north of 2%.
So you would
reasonable interest rates and inflation under control.
So, John, you'd stick with it. No election, no snap election for you.
Well, unless the leadership is replaced. I mean, if the leadership was replaced again, I think we have to have a snap election at that point because it would be against the vote of the membership of the Conservative Party.
John, thank you. Let's go to a break. This is The Great Debate. Up next, has Britain's international reputation been damaged by the financial turmoil of the last week?
This is the choice that humanity has to make in every age.
The world is calling for peace.
We will not rest until Ukraine prevails.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
I'm Becky Johnson, a Sky News Midlands correspondent based here in Birmingham. Allegations of exploitation in Leicester's clothing factories aren't new. In fact, it's been an open secret in this city for years. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
We're getting more and more stabbings, and essentially I think it's more and more younger children.
Here in the diverse industrial heart of England, we hear from people who have real stories to tell.
Parents are going to complain like this.
These protests are being organised primarily by people who aren't parents at the school.
We have to be prepared that patients will die from this illness.
The River Severn is still rising and people here in Ironbridge have been told it could go up by another metre. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
¡Viva México! ¡Viva! ¡Viva México!
Welcome back to The Great Debate, where this week we're asking, is Britain still great? Britain's built its good name around the world on parliamentary democracy, the rule of law and economic stability. We rightly make much of our soft power with our culture and our language. But last week's market mayhem seems to have rocked confidence in all of those attributes, and there are now serious questions over whether Britain remains a safe bet. Let's go to our viewers' panel on this and talk to Paul Peachy. Paul, I think you're in Wales, is that right?
That's correct. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening, Paul. Your thoughts?
I got a question for the panel. Is it time to rebuild our relationship with other countries in order to regain respect from the international community and build our standing as Great Britain again?
Thank you, Paul. So there's Paul's question. Is it time to rebuild Britain's international standing? And I want to talk to Simon now, before we come back to our panel. Simon, how do you react to Paul's question about our international standing?
Well, I query our international standing. I mean, my question is pretty straightforward, and I'd just like to know what we've done in the last 20 years that's made a difference.
You basically think that we haven't really... We've lost our prestige?
Yeah, we've lost our prestige. We've lost our influence in the world. I mean, you've only got to look at the treaty we signed in '97 with China, which guaranteed Hong Kong's independence as a democracy for 50 years. China's ripped it up. We did nothing that made a difference.
OK. Let's go, let me come to the panel. John Longworth, you spend a lot of time, I think, with businesses and trading across the world. Do you accept this picture of our diminished role in the world?
I think from a trade point of view, British goods and services are still highly respected and desired around the world. And the UK is making efforts to reach out to the world at large, to the Commonwealth and to the Trans-Pacific Partnership to participate in those trade activities. But, you know, we should remember that Britain's strength and its future was and will be built on the domestic economy, which is 70% of GDP. And what we need is to have a vibrant, innovative domestic economy with high productivity and growth so that we are all prosperous. That's what will make Britain great from a business and economic point of view.
But we just heard from Simon that we may tell ourselves all of those things, but nobody believes it any longer.
Well, actually, I mean, I find that incredible, really. I mean, I've done business on every continent, and I have to say that a lot of other businesses abroad and government officials actually really look to the UK for things like product standards, for good quality product, and are still very keen to buy from the UK. But we have neglected that to some degree because we became very insular when we were within the European Union.
Deborah.
Well, I kind of agree with that, but I don't think we can measure a country's greatness just on business. You know, we do have a voice in the world. We always have had a voice in the world, but it is very much based on legacy. I totally agree with you. And what we haven't done is formulated what we want to be. Who do we want to be? I think we've lost our way. We've lost our character. And it can't just be focused on an economy. You know, we used to have a voice that was listened to. And I have to say, when I go about business, I hear a lot of people, and I do a lot of international trade, and I hear a lot of people saying, you're great, you're fine, I understand you, I get it. What is going on in your government?
Gina, you are an investor, you deal with a lot of businesses across the world. How does it feel to you?
The rest of the world is looking on at us, and it's gone from sort of bewilderment to now feeling sorry for us. When John says the rest of the world doesn't have, we sort of everything is rosy, it isn't. You've got renowned international institutions really worried. The market's really worried. We do not operate in isolation. Whatever we do domestically has a global effect. That's why the IMF have intervened and said what they said. That's why you've got institutions like TS Lombard, a hugely renowned, huge organisation, actually terming us as having a moron premium index, is what they said. You've got people like UBS.
What premium index?
A moron premium index, because they're so worried about the financial peril of the way this government is running our country. We've got UBS, a huge organisation. I mean, around the world, they are worried about us. So you've got the financial worry. You've also got the fact that countries who emit confidence respect their institutions. And we've got governments, both governments, who've actually systematically gone about and actually damaged our institutions.
OK, James, here's these two pictures. This widely respected global power and this sad, pitiable little island. Where are you on this?
Well, I mean, the strange thing is there's truth in both, isn't there? I mean, everything Gina says about what's happened to our economy is obviously true, and yet we do still have this soft power. We have the English language, we have the BBC and the BBC World Service. We're enormously culturally influential. And I think sometimes for Britain, the problem is it's hard for us to get a perspective on which one of those we are. Are we this amazing, culturally vibrant, globally influential cultural superpower? Or are we this sort of, economic basket case that seems to, have this sort of terrible growth problem, terrible productivity problem? And I suspect maybe a lot of our issues stem from failing to kind of match those two things up. And I think there's certainly maybe at times a kind of overestimation of Britain on the world stage that we make about ourselves, perhaps reading that soft power into hard power. And, the kind of sort of... Sorry,
No, it's all right. It's OK. No. I want to go back to the viewers panel and I talked to one of our old friends, Crisilda Basu. Crisilda, tell me that when I talk to my relatives around the world, should I be feeling sort of jolly and proud, or should I be feeling miserable and slightly humiliated?
Well, no. I feel that, yes, Britain is great. People risk their lives to get here because they know that they will be treated with respect and their human rights will be met and honoured. They have freedom of expression as well. When there is a problem in another country, Britain is always the first country they ask to help, both financially and morally. So, in my opinion, Britain is still great.
Thank you very much, Crisilda. Let me go back to Paul Peachy. Paul, this is a point, isn't it, that we may feel a bit depressed about ourselves. We may look at all of the kinds of things that we've heard from, for example, Gina and James mentioned. But when push comes to shove, people do come to us. We've got a seat on the Security Council. The Ukrainians admire us. There's quite a lot to be said for us.
Well, yes. I mean, I would think that the UK was great at one point. We are still partly great, but we are diminishing our strength and our position in the world. What I can't quite get my head around is after Brexit, how does an isolationist agenda make Britain great in the international community?
All right, Paul, thank you. A couple of people have mentioned the issue of Britain fighting for its values and people who've put their lives on the line. I want to talk to Fred Beaumont, who served in the armed forces. I think, Fred, you've got a pretty trenchant view on this particular point. Fred, what's your thought?
Yeah, listen, of course Great Britain is great and relevant. Why? Because I live in this country and I know it's great. I love the place. And to all the people that live in this country, be proud of our country. We should be proud of it. We've been in worse predicaments than this in the past, and we didn't get on like this. Whinging, moaning, we got on with it. There was a can-do attitude, and we defeated what was in front of us. As a veteran, I served nearly 39 years. I saw people in other parts of the world looking up to our country and what good it's been doing and is still doing. Why do you think so many people from all over the world still want to come to this country and will do in the future? because it's a great place to live. You can people can put their thumbs down. It's a great place to live. And if you want to make it better, make it better. But it's a great place. I love the place.
OK, Gina, there's a riposte. Why don't you all stop moaning?
It's not about moaning. It's about protecting what we have, because it is a great place, and I would fight for this country. I love this country, but we can't keep on allowing our leaders to diminish it. It's not about the people who live here. And, you know, as they said, we are the first to step up when there's a disaster, when we, you know, the amount of money we raise from the public, and in most instances, is quite astonishing, even when people are suffering. So, you know, we have great values. What we have to do is put in protections to make sure we don't lose what we value. And the tolerance that we have and the politics and the leaders we have are actually the ones who are destroying and poisoning it. And our machinery of government is just not strong enough. We've got to be able to protect the foundations of what makes us a good, happy, sound, tolerant, striving society. And it's those foundations that are not being looked after by our leaders.
All right, we're going to develop that point. You are watching The Great Debate. Up next, we're bringing back the B word. Time to talk about Brexit.
The choice is in your hands.
Folks, this is a once-in-a-lifetime, unrepeatable opportunity.
Sky News is projecting that the UK has voted out.
We're going to wave you goodbye.
Welcome back to The Great Debate, where this week we're asking, is Britain still great? Now, whatever you think about Brexit now, there's no doubt it caused the biggest rift in the firmament of this country for decades. Britain's separated itself from Europe and dispensed with the old checks and balances that were once so familiar. But big questions remain over Northern Ireland, over trade, of course, over immigration. Let's talk first to Louise Brown about this. Louise, what's your view?
Britain is not still great. We've completely lost our standing in the world. I'm from Sunderland, and we were promised sunny uplands from Brexit, which certainly hasn't happened, let alone the infamous levelling up. So my question would be, if you could undo Brexit, knowing what we know now, would you?
Thank you, Louise. Louise's question for the panel. If you knew what you know now, would you undo Brexit? Gina Miller surprised me.
Simple answer, of course I would. But you can't, it's a hypothetical. But it's not what I know now, it's what I knew before and all the way along, because the debate was very black and white, and that's what I think one of the problems is. It's so nuanced. You can't have a 40-year relationship and try and reduce it to a slogan. But also, I would do because of the future generations, because the issues coming down the road do not have borders, be it the environment, be it the mass movement of people, be it the age of pandemics, whatever it is. Our young people deserve us to be part of a bloc where we actually were exercising our soft power and where we need to be collectively dealing with issues that are going to be globally affecting all of us. And so I think for their sake, I would absolutely undo it.
John Longworth, you were what is now called a Brexiteer. Any buyer's remorse?
None at all. Like all revolutions, it takes time for things to unravel. And, of course, we had a situation in 2016 where, unfortunately, we had an administration for a number of years that did everything in its power, along with a Remainer Parliament, to actually undermine and reverse the vote of the people of the United Kingdom. The main thing is that the UK now has self-determination. The people of Britain can decide their own future, and that's the main thing. But on the economy, a lot of the benefits have not yet been seen. And that's because we're only now getting a government that's prepared to drive those forward. But nonetheless, you know, Germany's economy right now is a basket case. We have massively lower unemployment than most European countries. Our inflation rate is comparable. We're doing OK versus the EU, and the banking system in the EU has systemic problems.
John,
the EU could yet collapse.
John, you can't see it from where you are, but I do have to tell you that the view you just expressed is not a tremendously popular view with our viewers panel. Deborah Meaden, you were you were a lukewarm Remainer, I think?
Yes, but I'm really surprised. What I was shaking my head about, I was really surprised to hear John's talk about self-determination, because anybody who does international trade understands that if you want to trade with a country, you have to agree the rules by which you trade. Unfortunately, now we have to agree that with every single country. Before, we could simply trade with our biggest trading partner without having to agree the rules because they were already set. Now, I have seen too many businesses fall foul of that. And when I say fall foul, I mean close, shut up shop, lives devastated, to even contemplate that that is a good thing. Now, that's only one aspect of Brexit, and I think it's difficult to overturn something that the majority of people thought they wanted. Right now, I think we have to get our relationship with the EU right. We're not even talking. You know, we haven't resolved half of the issues. It's like we don't like each other now, you know, and we've got to work those things out, or we're going to see more devastation.
All right, I want to talk to somebody who actually came from one of our, former EU partners, Carlos Enrique. Carlos, what's your view? You've been here 20 years, I think?
Yeah, that's correct.
Good evening. So when I came to England, I found Britain was very open, welcoming and free. I managed to make a career here, get a British passport, and that's what makes Britain great. I have noticed, however, in my opinion, that over time this has changed. Years of austerity result in the priorities of the public opinion shifting towards more domestic national values. An example of this is the Rwanda immigration camps. Is it possible to get back to a more tolerant Britain?
Carlos, did you think of the Brexit vote as part of this trend that you've just identified?
No. I think it came from the time of austerity. It came from the financial crisis. It came from looking for people to blame for the financial crisis, and they didn't aim to the right people.
OK, that's interesting. James, I mean, we write for the same newspaper. I have no idea where you were on Brexit. What's your view about this?
I think I was with Deborah. I was definitely a Brexit sceptic, but not fanatically so. I think everything that's happened since has pushed me in the Gina direction. I think really we found out recently what a vulnerable and slightly frightening place the modern world can be, and that the European Union just looks more and more attractive, I think, the more we experience these slightly kind of terrifying storms that are, running through the modern economy, the pandemic, all these things.
John, how do you respond to this? The traffic seems to be going away from you.
Well, of course, there are lots of institutions and organisations and people who are very keen for the UK not to succeed outside the European Union, because it would actually undermine the European Union's hold on countries that are in the Union. If we succeed, we demonstrate that having left, we're doing very well, and therefore the EU may not be relevant. So that is one of the factors to take into account. There's no question in my mind that actually our trade deals around the world have been, in some cases, superior to those that the EU have been able to negotiate themselves. In fact, we have trade deals that they don't have.
It's just that's not true.
Deborah.
That is not true.
It's not.
No, it is
well,
true.
Actually,
it is true, I'm afraid.
Can I ask John which trade deal is better
deal?
than the trade deal we had with the biggest trading bloc in the world? Which trade deal?
Well, let me just say this. The European Union always goes for the lowest common denominator. So if Italian tomato producers don't like it...
Trade deal. Which trade deal is better than the one we had with the EU?
We've had superior trade deals with Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, to name just a few, than the EU.
Let him respond. Which one,
than
John?
the EU have.
You were talking about Australia.
Yeah, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, we've had superior trade deals with those countries than the EU have with those countries. Similarly, Japan. So we are actually doing just as well because we're actually defending and promoting our own interests. And let's not forget, tariffs around the world are an average of 2%. Actually, having trade deals isn't the be-all and end-all anyway. If we really wanted to increase our productivity and make things better, we would unilaterally remove tariffs and non-tariff barriers to imports. Because
Gina,
that will make people
let's talk of trade deals. It's not the end of the world.
Can I just say, because this started off as a theoretical question from one of the panellists, one of the audience. Just to get it absolutely clear, we have Brexited, and it's legal, and it's done, and it's been years and years. So we do actually have to try and make it the best deal we can make it. But the way we're acting with the EU, with our partners, is not inspiring confidence. And when it comes to trade deals around the world, the one that we should have done and we were told we would get is the US. And that is nowhere near. I mean, it's not even on the table. I mean, forget it. It's just not happening anytime. And when it comes to replicating trade deals we had in other places, That's not the same as actually striking a new trade deal. And we haven't actually finished striking these trade deals. We're talking to people about some of them. And, you know, if you look at what we did with Japan, that was much more inferior than what we had with the EU. When it looks to Australia, look at what the Australian deal is going to do to our farmers, to our agriculture. It's sold them down the stream. You know, this idea, we have to be honest with the public because there is no going back. So why not tell them the truth?
John, we're kidding people.
Well, we are telling the truth. No, that's completely rubbish. The deal with Japan was superior to the EU's deal. The Australia deal is managed over a long period of time. And I find it quite astounding that people will actually say that we shouldn't have cheaper food and lower the cost of living for British people.
OK, this is one topic on which my powers of persuasion of bringing people together are obviously going to fail. Let's go to the break. This is the great debate. Up next, is it time to rethink brand Britain?
And here they come, the Red Arrows in red, white and blue.
Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
Well, there's a real sense now that people are beginning to expect that this whole airlift is coming to an end, and they're really, really desperate. We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people and putting them into trucks. You either live and recover, or you die.
OK, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
We help you understand the world with us.
Over the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right. An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
It's got out of control, but they've withdrawn. It's so hot.
I'm Inzamam Rashid, and I'm Sky's North of England correspondent. We give a voice to communities often unheard and unserved from a region with a distinct history and global impact.
Welcome back to The Great Debate, where this week we're asking, is Britain still great? Britain's cultural influence has been built over centuries, framed by the Empire, the Industrial Revolution and, more recently, our popular culture. Westminster itself is known as the Mother of Parliament. Viewers across the globe watch the orderly queue to see the Queen's coffin, a sight that confirmed the value that Brits put on being well-mannered and civilised. But with a new king yet to establish himself and 4 prime ministers in the past 6 years, is there now a sense of drift when others think about what the United Kingdom represents? Let's talk to Shane Mason. Shane, you've got a question for our panel on this issue.
Good evening. I'm currently studying for a postgraduate master's degree in international relations with the University of Cambridge. And Britain's identity and role in the world going forward is a reoccurring theme across topics and in lectures and seminars. So my question to everyone is does the new era of the monarchy provide an opportunity to reframe Britain's cultural and social identity in the world by its ties to the Commonwealth?
Thank you very much, Shane. There is the question. Does the current situation give us a moment to reframe Britain's cultural and social identity? James Marriott.
I think it's a really good point. And I think one of the fascinating things about the sad death of the Queen was that it broke this really important historical link with a past Britain. You know, when Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne, we were an empire. She lived through the Second World War. And I think her death suddenly makes us, gives us a whole different relationship with the future. And I think perhaps in some positive ways, we will be able, under Charles III, one of the things we'll be able to do is think about ourselves as a modern nation and not so, we can abandon some of those long ties that held us to the past and maybe kind of gave this slightly unhelpful notion of Britain as, great in all the past ways that we've been accustomed to thinking of it as being.
Are we now in a place where we can now rethink where we stand in the world and project something different to everybody else? And if so, how would we do it?
I think there's 2 questions there. One is we are going to continue to shrink because we can see the reaction from a lot of Commonwealth countries. I'm a child of the Commonwealth. I grew up, but many countries in the Commonwealth are talking about independence. We are going to go through that conversation, I think, under this new king, and Charles III has actually acknowledged this in some of his speeches. So, we will have to, some of those links will be broken anyway. But also, I think it gives us the opportunity, as James said, to look forwards, because I think what has happened is we haven't invested enough in where our place is in the future, be it in terms of our curriculum, our skills, our developing a green energy, green economy, setting the standards in the world. We are behind. We have to be realistic about what our children are achieving in school. I mean, we used to be one of the places in the world where we had the best attainment levels. We now have something like a third of GCSE students who are not getting, maths or English at basic level. These are fundamental issues we have to address, and we have the opportunity now to actually do something quite reformative, I think, and actually almost like a renaissance. I think we do have the opportunity to do that, but it must be in a way that is collectively responsible and not where we divide and make sure that some people do better and the mass majority are left behind. We can't go back to the future, if you like, of some sort of feudal vulture capitalism that doesn't bring everyone up with us. So I think we have a great opportunity, but we have to do it in a way that actually increases the lot for everyone.
All right, well, let's see how much this conversation, this debate of the last hour or so has changed opinion, if at all, amongst our viewers' panel. You remember I asked you in part 1 how many of you felt more inclined to be optimistic about the greatness of Great Britain, and those of you who were more pessimistic. So let's start again. Who feels more optimistic about that Great Britain? Let's have a look at our... Who still feels optimistic or has become optimistic? OK, it's looking like a small fall off. But let's see who feels actually pessimistic about that future? Oh, well, that's interesting. I would estimate, in fact, that the optimists have it, which is not exactly where I would have expected it. But thank you very much indeed for that. OK, that's all we have time for this evening. It just remains for me to say thank you to our panellists here in the studio and in Birmingham, Gina Miller, James Marriott, Deborah Meaden, and in Birmingham, John Longworth. Of course, it's you at home who are always at the centre of our conversations. And if you'd like to be part of the programme next time, get in touch by emailing thegreatdebate@sky.uk. And for you at home, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you the same time next week for another great debate.